Evan had been going to the same gym in Riverside City for almost a year after moving there for work. After work, most evenings, it was the only place where his mind felt clear after long shifts at the warehouse. I started noticing a man who always seemed to be there at the same time as me. I didn't not think much of it at first. You see the same faces enough times and they just become part of the background. He was a tall guy with a black hoodie and always wore headphones, even when he was not using them. I first really noticed him when I was doing bench press and he was on the machine behind me. He wasn't actually lifting, just sitting there, watching the mirror like he was waiting for something. When I finished my set, he stood up and walked over casually. He asked if I needed a spot. I said sure. His name was Marcus. He said it like we already knew each other. He was friendly in a way that felt slightly too fast. He asked where I lived, what I did for work. I kept my answers vague. After that, he started showing up near me every session. He would nod from across the room and sometimes mirror my exercises without using any weights. It was strange, but not enough to complain about. One day, he asked me to grab a drink after the gym. I hesitated, but said, okay. We went to a small cafe nearby. He talked nonstop about fitness routines and discipline. Then his tone shifted. He started asking personal questions, like if I lived alone and what time I usually got home. I laughed it off, but felt uneasy. After that, he added me on social media. I accepted, thinking it was harmless. Over the next few weeks, he became more present in my life. He messaged daily, sending gym clips and motivational quotes. Sometimes he asked if I was at home or going to the gym. I started ignoring some messages. Then one night while I was in bed, I heard something outside my window. A low voice saying my name slowly, drawn out. It sounded exactly like Marcus. I froze and listened. The sound stopped suddenly. I got up and checked the window but saw nothing. I told myself it was just my imagination. But the next morning I noticed something unsettling. There were footprints in the dirt right below my window. I didn't tell anyone. Marcus messaged me that same day asking if I had heard anything strange last night. I didn't reply. I started avoiding the gym at my usual time and switched to early mornings, hoping not to see him. It worked for a few days. Then one morning I arrived and saw his bag already on a bench. My stomach dropped. He was there, smiling like nothing had changed. He came over and asked where I had been. I laughed awkwardly and went back to my workout, but he followed me from machine to machine. It felt like he was always one step behind. Later that week, he asked me to go out again. I said, maybe another time. He didn't like that answer. His messages became more frequent and more direct. He started asking where I was every night. I began feeling watched even when I was alone. One evening, I heard tapping on my window again. My heart sank as I recognized the voice calling my name. I checked the window and saw nothing again, but I knew he was close. The next day, I decided to stop engaging completely. I blocked him on social media. I thought that would end it, but that night I heard footsteps in my backyard, slow, deliberate steps circling the house. Then I heard my name again whispered right outside. I realized he wasn't stopping. I grabbed my phone and called a friend but kept quiet. The footsteps paused, then slowly faded away. I waited until morning before leaving my room. When I looked outside, I saw something that made my stomach turn. Near the fence were fresh marks in the dirt leading away from my house. I didn't know how he got my address, but I knew this was not random anymore. I decided I wouldn't go back to that gym ever again. I told myself I just needed distance. Even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was always just outside my reach, watching, waiting for me to slip up again. I knew I was not safe anymore. I did not tell anyone what was happening at first. It felt embarrassing in a way I could not explain, like I had let a normal situation turn into something bigger just by paying attention to it. I tried to convince myself it would fade once I changed my routine completely. For a while, I stopped going to the gym entirely. I took evening walks instead and kept my phone on me at all times. Nothing happened during that stretch. and slowly I started to relax again. I even started thinking maybe I had overreacted to a guy who was just socially awkward. That idea lasted right up until I joined a different gym across town. The new place was bigger, busier, and more modern. I chose it specifically because I assumed someone like Marcus would not bother tracking me across the city for something so small. The first week went fine. I blended in, kept my head down, and focused on my workouts. I did not see anyone familiar, and for the first time in weeks, I felt normal again. On the 8th day, I walked in around 6:30 in the evening like usual and headed straight for the free weights. It took me about 10 minutes to notice him. He was sitting near the stretching mats, not using anything, just watching. Marcus. Same hoodie, same posture, same stillness, like he had been placed there instead of walking in like everyone else. I remember my grip tightening around the dumbbells without even realizing it. I tried to act like I did not see him. I moved stations, then moved again. Every time I changed position, I caught him adjusting just slightly so he still had a view of me. When I finally looked directly at him, he smiled like we had planned this. I left the gym early that day. In the parking lot, I kept my head down and walked fast. My car was parked near the far edge of the lot, and for a moment I thought maybe I was being paranoid again. Then I saw him leaning against a car 2 rows away, not moving, just watching. I got into my car, locked the doors immediately, and sat there for a few seconds trying to breathe normally. When I looked up again, he was gone. I told myself he probably just went back inside, but when I started the engine, I noticed something on my windshield. A small gym towel folded neatly under the wiper blade. It was not mine. I did not get out. I just drove home and kept checking my mirrors the entire way. That night, I could not sleep properly. Every sound outside felt too intentional. At around 2 a.m., I heard something hit the side of the house. Not loud, but deliberate. I sat up and listened. A few seconds later, I heard my name again. Soft, controlled, like someone practicing how to say it quietly enough not to alert others. I did not move. I did not go to the window. I just stayed still until the sound disappeared. The next morning, I called the gym and canceled my membership. I told them I was moving. It was easier than explaining anything. I also filed a report at the local station, though I didn't have much evidence beyond messages and vague incidents. The officer told me to stay aware and call immediately if anything escalated. I left feeling like nothing would actually come of it. 2 days later, I came home from work and found my front door slightly open. Not wide open, just enough to notice it was not how I left it. I remember standing on the porch for a long moment before stepping inside. The air felt different, like someone had been there recently. Nothing looked stolen, nothing was broken, but on my kitchen counter was something that made my stomach drop. A gym receipt with my name printed on it. I had not been to that gym in days. My hands started shaking as I picked it up. It was dated the same day I canceled my membership. At the bottom of the receipt was a handwritten note. It only said, "You left without saying goodbye." That was the moment I stopped trying to rationalize anything. I called the police again, and this time they took it more seriously. An officer came to the house, took photos, and asked a lot more questions. They also suggested setting up a camera system and changing locks immediately. I did both that same day. For the next week, I barely slept. I checked the cameras constantly, even when nothing was happening. Every notification made my heart jump. Then, one night, around 3 a.m., I got a motion alert. Front porch. I opened the app and saw him, standing there. Marcus. Just standing, looking directly at the camera. He didn't move for several seconds. Then he leaned in slightly and smiled. The feed cut out right after that. I called the police immediately, but by the time they arrived, he was gone. They searched the area but found nothing. No sign of forced entry, no footprints, nothing left behind. After that night, I moved out of that place within a week. I didn't wait for permission or closure. I just packed what I could and left. I never saw Marcus again after that, but sometimes I still think about how normal it all started. A nod in a gym, a spot on a bench, a conversation that should have ended there. It still bothers me how easily someone can step into your life without breaking anything, and how hard it becomes to get them out once they decide they belong there. Ryan had always liked the late evening gym hours because the place felt almost empty then, like the world had slowed down just enough for him to think clearly after work in Denver. He was 26, lived alone in a small apartment near the River District, and stuck to his simple routine. Work, gym, sleep, repeat. Nothing about his life was exciting, and that was exactly how he preferred it. For a long time, the gym was just a background place filled with the same regular faces, people he never spoke to but recognized by habit. That changed the night he noticed her. She was new, or at least he thought she was, because he had never seen her before. She stood out not because she was loud or dramatic, but because she seemed oddly still compared to everyone else. She usually came in around the same time he did, wearing oversized headphones and a gray hoodie that made her blend into the muted lighting of the gym. At first, Ryan assumed she was just another person trying to keep to herself, maybe focused on fitness or just uncomfortable in crowds. But over the next few sessions, he started noticing patterns that did not quite make sense. She never seems to complete a full workout. Instead, she would move from machine to machine, staying close enough to be near him no matter where he went. If he lifted weights on one side of the room, she would eventually drift into that area too, not immediately, but always within a few minutes. It was subtle enough that he almost convinced himself it was coincidence until it kept happening over and over again. One night, he caught her watching him in the mirror while pretending to stretch, and when their eyes met, she quickly looked away like nothing had happened. He finally decided to speak to her one evening after she accidentally ended up on the same bench area as him. He asked if she was using the equipment, trying to sound casual. She looked slightly surprised, as if she had not expected him to acknowledge her at all, and then shook her head and said she was just resting. Her voice was quiet, almost too soft for the noise at the gym. She introduced herself as Leela, and after that brief exchange, she started talking more openly, asking him small questions about his routine, his schedule, and how long he had been training. It felt normal at first, but there was something about the way she listened that felt intense, like she was trying to memorize everything he said. Over the next few days, she would occasionally wait near the entrance or appear just as he finished his sets, as if she knew exactly when he would be done. Ryan started to feel a growing discomfort he couldn't fully explain, but he kept telling himself it was harmless and that she was just socially awkward. One day, she asked if he wanted to grab a coffee after the gym. Ryan hesitated, but eventually agreed, thinking it would clear the air and make things feel normal again. They went to a small place nearby that was usually empty in the evenings. At first, the conversation seemed harmless, just small talk about work and hobbies. But then Leela started asking more specific questions, like what street he lived on and what time he usually got home from work. Ryan laughed it off and avoided giving details, but he noticed she did not seem satisfied with vague answers. Instead, she kept circling back to the same topics in different ways, as if trying to piece together a map of his life. When they left, she insisted on walking in the same direction as him, even though her place was clearly the opposite way. He told her he was fine walking alone, but she still followed at a distance until he turned a corner and lost sight of her. That was the first time he felt a real sense that something about her was not normal. That night, when Ryan got home, he tried to convince himself that nothing serious was happening, that it was all just coincidence and his imagination filling in gaps. But as he lay in bed, he kept replaying every interaction, every moment where she seems to appear too conveniently, too precisely. He checked his phone and saw no new messages from her, which should have been a relief, but instead it felt like the calm before something else. Around midnight, he heard a faint sound outside his apartment, like something brushing against the wall near his window. He stayed still, listening carefully, trying to decide if it was wind or something else. Then he heard it again, this time clearer, a soft voice saying his name. He sat up slowly, heart already pounding, and looked toward the window but saw no darkness. The sound stopped abruptly, and for a moment, everything was silent. Then his phone lit up on the nightstand, not with a message, but with a notification that the front door camera had detected motion. He opens the app and froze when he saw her standing in front of his building entrance, looking directly up toward the camera without moving. She did not wave or smile. She just stood there, perfectly still, as if she already knew he was watching. Then the feed cut out. Ryan stared at the block screen, unable to process what he had just seen. He looked out the window again, but the street was empty now. He tried to call security, but his hands were shaking too much to dial properly. When he finally looked back at the app, the recording history showed nothing saved at all. That made his stomach drop. He sat there in silence, realizing this was no longer something he could ignore or explain away as coincidence or mistake. At least, not anymore tonight. Ever. Ryan barely slept after that night. Every small sound in the apartment felt louder than it should have. The hallway pipes, the fridge clicking on, even distant traffic outside kept pulling him back into alertness. By morning, he was exhausted but still on edge, like his body refused to fully reset. He told himself it was probably just a misunderstanding, maybe someone standing outside the building for completely unrelated reasons. It helped a little, but not enough to calm the unease sitting in his chest. For the next 2 days, nothing happened. No sightings, no sounds, no notifications on his phone. That silence should have felt like relief, but instead it felt temporary, like something was waiting for the right moment. On the third evening, he decided to go back to the gym. He had avoided it since the incident, but skipping workouts made him feel like he was letting fear take control of his routine. The gym was supposed to be the one place where nothing followed him. When he walked in, the usual noise hit him right away. Weights clanking, music playing too loud, people talking between sets. Everything looked normal. For the first 20 minutes, he felt almost foolish for being so tense. Then he saw her again. Lila was near the stretching mats, sitting on the floor with her hoodie pulled up. She wasn't using her phone or doing any exercise. She was just sitting there, facing the open gym floor like she had been waiting for him specifically. Ryan stopped for a second, pretending to adjust his water bottle while he processed what he was seeing. He told himself she might not even notice him. He considered turning around and leading, but that would make it obvious. So instead, he kept walking. He chose machines on the opposite side of the gym and tried to focus on his set, but after a few minutes, he noticed her again in the mirror. She had moved closer without him seeing, not directly next to him, but close enough that she had a clear line of sight. When he looked back at her, she immediately looked away. That small reaction made his stomach tighten. He finished his set early and moved again. Same result. Within minutes, she had adjusted her position again, always keeping him in view without approaching directly. This time, Ryan didn't stay. He grabbed his things and left early, telling himself he would figure it out later. Outside in the parking lot, he walked faster than usual without looking back. Halfway to his car, he felt that same instinct from before, that feeling of being watched before anything actually appears. He stopped near the driver's side door and slowly turned his head. She was across the lot, standing near a light pole, not moving, just watching. Ryan didn't hesitate this time. He got into his car, locked the doors immediately, and drove out of the parking lot without looking again. That night, he blocked her number, deleted old messages, and decided he was done with the situation entirely. He even considered switching gyms, but part of him still wanted to believe that ignoring her would be enough. For a few days, it seemed like it worked. No messages, no sightings, no strange activity. Then, one night while he was cooking dinner, his apartment door camera sent a motion alert. He opened it immediately. The front porch was empty. For a second, he thought it was a false trigger, maybe a passing car light or wind, but then he noticed something that made him pause. The camera had already recorded 10 seconds before the notification came through. He played it back. At first, it showed nothing, just the front porch. Then, at the edge of the frame, someone slowly stepped into view. Lila. She was standing directly in front of his door, very close, almost too close for the camera angle. She did not knock. She just stood there, staring at the door. Then she leaned slightly forward and tilted her head like she was listening for something inside. After a few seconds, she turned and walked away, disappearing out of frame. Ryan felt his chest tighten as he replayed it twice, trying to find some explanation that made sense. He didn't have one. He called the police that night.
They came, checked the area, and took a report, but there was no sign of forced entry or recent presence, just footprints that could not be clearly matched to anything useful. They told him to keep documentation and avoid engaging if she appeared again. He agreed, but internally, he already knew that advice was not enough. 2 nights later, at around 2:40 a.m., he woke up to a sound outside his bedroom window. Not tapping this time. A voice. Low, steady, almost calm, saying his name. Ryan froze in bed, eyes locked on the window. The curtains were slightly open, just enough for streetlight to filter in. He didn't move. The voice repeated his name again, closer this time. He finally forced himself up slowly and approached the window. When he pulled the curtain back just slightly, the street outside looked empty. But as he leaned closer, he noticed something at the bottom edge of his view. A figure standing directly below his window, looking up. He stepped back immediately and grabbed his phone, but before he could even unlock it, the voice outside stopped completely. Silence returned. He stayed awake the rest of the night, sitting on his couch with the lights on, listening for anything, expecting anything. But nothing came. By morning, there was no sign anyone had been there. No footprints, no marks, nothing out of place. That was the part that bothered him most, because it meant she knew exactly how close she could get without leaving proof. And Ryan realized something he didn't want to admit. Blocking her didn't end it. It only changed how carefully she was doing it.